With great power comes great responsibility, and with one great 107 comes the responsibility to bring 107 more. But this time we're not just talking about the 90s cartoon, oh no, we are diving deep into Spidey's colorful cartoon history. Hey guys, I'm Joe with channel Frederator, and today we are going to be looking at some of Spider-Man's most recent television shows and provide a sneak peek into Spidey's animated future. Let's swing into the wide web of the wall crawler's animated history. Let's start with the now ironically named Spider-Man, the new animated series. This show premiered in July 2003 and followed right on the heels of 2002's Spider-Man. The show continued with the version of Spider-Man from the widely popular Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. The show was originally going to follow the storyline of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, which depicts Peter and company still in high school. After the success of Sam Raimi's version, however, they reworked the show to follow Peter, MJ, and Harry living that college life. Comic book writer Brian Michael Bendis was an executive producer on the show. Bendis was, at the time, writing the Ultimate Spider-Man comic. Executives were so concerned with maintaining a younger audience that they cut out Aunt May's character altogether. J. Jonah Jameson makes limited appearances as well. The series dedicated itself to focusing on the college life instead. The series was animated by Mainframe Entertainment, a Canadian-based studio that had previously worked on other CGI shows like Heavy Gear and Max Steel. This was the first Spider-Man show to use CG for its animation. Mainframe said they wanted to retain a classic animation look, combining bright, lively, abstract colors, including a seemingly realistic, neon-lit city. Spider-Man, the new animated series, used cell shading, a shading technique used to make CG models look more like original cell animation, hence the name. Used heavily in video games such as The Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker, and Killer 7, it creates a clean and graphic look, giving the show a traditional comic book feel. Mainframe created a facial animation software called Grin to animate the show. The program, while advanced, still needed a high amount of creative input from the animators. One of the most important parts of animating in Grin was getting the shape of the mouth right, because, as the studio explained, you get the mouth shape right, people don't look at it. You get the mouth shape wrong, they can't look anywhere else. Before animating, Robin Shea, the supervising animator, had his team listen to the dialogue with their eyes closed. This helped the team imagine the most accurate expressions of emotion. The actual style of animation for the show is also interesting. Rainmaker Studios would motion capture actors to get broad movement, then use keyframe animation to add subtle, nuanced movement to make the CG models come to life. Brandon Vietti, an animation director on the new animated series, said that working in a 3D space benefited Spider-Man because his character relies on so much motion. Tracking those movements in 3D made him come alive in a way that wasn't possible in 2D. When you think of Spider-Man, it's hard not to think of his colorful band of villains always trying to mess Spidey's day up. Sadly, even though Sony pushed for the show to be loosely based off of Sam Raimi's films, they were not allowed to use any villains slated to appear in the movies. When watching Spider-Man, the new animated series, you may find his voice familiar. That's because it's Neil Patrick Harris. You know, Barney from How I Met Your Mother, Dr. Horrible from the Sing-Along blog, and the Kid Doctor himself, Doogie Howser. Neil would go on to voice Peter in the 2010 video game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. The game featured 4 different versions of the webhead: a 1920 Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099, a teenage Ultimate Spider-Man, and the regular, modern-day Amazing Spider-Man, who was voiced by Neil. And Spidey isn't the only one with a celebrity voice cast. Mary Jane Watson is voiced by singer-songwriter Lisa Loeb, and Harry Osborn? Well, he's voiced by Ian Ziering, who played Steve Sanders in Beverly Hills 90210. Other interesting voice cameos include Rob Zombie as Kurt Connors, Michael Dorn as Kraven, Kathy Griffin as Roxanne Gaines, Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin, and of course, no Marvel show is complete without a cameo from Stan the Man himself. Almost all of the 13 episodes of the show were infamously aired out of order on MTV. This would be changed on the show's DVD box set release in 2004, where it was put in chronological order. When composing the music for the show, John Digweed and Nick Muir said they wanted the soundtrack to match the darker tone of the animation and storytelling. They accomplished this by creating atmospheric electronic music that has an explosive, high-energy quality to it. Digweed and Muir composed the music specifically for each scene thanks to having a digital copy of the show on their computer. They would watch the show and compose the music in the moment. Muir said they didn't want the music to be totally triumphant because of the doubts that Spider-Man has about himself and his powers. That doubt put a curve on things, which was reflected in the music. Overall, the series did well with critics and was nominated for an Annie Award for Outstanding Achievement in an Animated Television Production. While the show never got picked up by another network, There were some ideas as to who would be in the second season. Vietti wanted to use more of Craven and have Mysterio make an appearance as well. Like many shows that only have a single season, Spider-Man the New Animated Series ended up on a juicy cliffhanger involving his new love interest, Indira Daimonji, and Spider-Man potentially giving up his sweet superhero gig for good. It's a shame we'll never see the conclusion. Next up, it's Spectacular Spider-Man. This series premiered on March 2008 on the CW during the Kids WB block. The series ran for 2 seasons, with its second season airing on Disney XD instead of the CW. While a third season was planned, it was cancelled due to legal issues with Disney, who had recently purchased Marvel, and Sony, who was producing the show. Television writer Greg Weisman led Spectacular Spider-Man as head writer and supervising producer. His previous work includes creating Gargoyles and writing for Justice League Unlimited and The Batman. Victor Cook was the series director. Cook has quite the resume as well, having directed several Disney TV shows before Spectacular Spidey. These include Lilo and Stitch, Tarzan, and the 101 Dalmatians show. Spectacular Spider-Man focused on younger Peter Parker more than the previous animated series did. It followed him in the midst of high school, surrounded by Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn, Mary Jane, Liz Allen, and Flash Thompson. Weisman said they did this because they wanted to conflate the multiple eras of Spider-Man into one show. So, they took those characters from Peter's late high school and early college years and placed them earlier in Peter's life. This series did a great job combining classic comic book characters with newer ones. Kenny King Kong was taken from the Ultimate Spider-Man comic and added to Peter's high school roster of supporting characters. He is Flash's buddy, but with a somewhat softer heart than the Jock. Weisman said that if there was a good idea, they were going to use it. They referenced the original comics, the modern-day comics, and even the movies. Let's start with some movie references. In Season 1, Episode 10, when Spidey initially comes into contact with the symbiote, he is sporting the symbiote suit from Spider-Man 3. The suit, after completely taking control of Peter, then resembles the classic symbiote suit that was worn in the comics. When Spider-Man tries to take off the symbiote suit, the face of the symbiote leaps out of Peter's chest, a scene straight from Spider-Man 3. In Season 1, Episode 5, Spider-Man, during his first fight with Sandman, takes a swipe at Sandman's legs in the same way his movie counterpart does in Spider-Man 3. Yes, all great Spideys fight alike. While rescuing an out-of-control truck, Spidey desperately tries to slow it down by webbing the surrounding buildings. This technique is also used in Spider-Man 2's famous train rescue scene. In Season 1, Episode 12, Uncle Ben is about to drop Peter off at the library. Much like in the Sam Raimi movie, the conversation they share in the car is nearly identical to the one they had in the original Spider-Man movie. The series was highly praised for staying true to the original Amazing Spider-Man comics. There is a ton of imagery taken directly from Spidey's most famous comic covers and panels, beginning with one of the very first shots you see in the theme song. It is the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15, Spidey's first appearance. In Season 1, Episode 12, while inside Peter's subconscious, Spider-Man jumps onto a black and white image of all his friends and family. This references Amazing Spider-Man number 100. In Season 1, Episode 9, the scene where Spider-Man is being tied up and strung around on Green Goblin's glider is a direct reference to the cover of Amazing Spider-Man number 39. Arguably one of Spider-Man's greatest comic book moments is taken panel for panel from Amazing Spider-Man number 33. In Season 2, Episode 4, Spider-Man is trying to lift a large piece of rubble off of himself while drowning in order to save Gwen. In the comic, it's a piece of machinery that he lifts in order to get medicine for a dying Aunt May. They also used a classic Mary Jane line from the comics. Throughout the first season, Aunt May tries to hook Peter up with her friend's niece, Mary Jane. Knowing nothing other than that she has a great personality, Peter isn't interested in going to the fall formal with her. But when the two finally meet, Peter is dumbstruck, and MJ responds, "Face it, Tiger, you've hit the jackpot." Weisman felt that Mary Jane's eventual reveal was one of the best comic book character introductions of all time. They wanted to do her introduction justice, and not shortchange the character by having her be introduced way too early in the series. Weisman and company met some resistance from the network for Mary Jane's introduction. The network felt that her line was too conceited, and asked them to change it. Weisman pushed back, and it remained in the show. To contrast MJ's fiery personality, they made Gwen more shy and timid than her comic book counterpart. Weisman said they wanted more diversity in their female characters, and having Gwen be Peter's shy, nerdy friend into the more sociable Gwen that we know from the comics later in Season 2. Gwen was meant to essentially be a female Peter Parker, pre-spider powers. The staff wanted to create a character that everyone would easily fall in love with, so the audience would understand why she was Peter's first great love. For Liz Allen, Weisman said they wanted to treat her as a character that makes real personal growth in the series. Though she starts out being somewhat shallow and cruel, They wanted to have Liz realize, through interactions with Peter and Flash, that she doesn't want to be that girl anymore. These direct comic book references make sense, since Weissman's main influence for the series was the original Stan Lee Steve Ditko run on Amazing Spider-Man. Upon getting the job, he went back and reread many of the original comics, and even included a reference to Ditko in the episode The Invisible Hand. As Spidey swings away from Tombstone's office, we see his building with the words Ditko on it. The production team decided early on that they were not going to create a single original character for the show. This was in reference to the source material, both new and old, though Weissman said it was a strange thing to do considering his history creating completely original shows such as Gargoyles. While they did use classic comic book characters and stories, the creators did their best to take those characters and put them in a modern high school setting. Instead of ripping them right out of the pages of the comics, they took the core of those characters and figured out what they would be like in this new setting. The show ran according to the 4 C's. They wanted each episode to be cohesive, coherent, classic, and contemporary. Even the design of Spider-Man's costume stayed true to the classic comics. He has mechanical web shooters, creates his own web fluid, has the underarm web wings, and even has a spider signal to announce his arrival to his enemies. Spider-Man Homecoming followed suit, as the MCU Peter Parker's costume has all of these throwbacks as well. Josh Keaton voiced the webhead for both seasons. Keaton is a superhero voice acting veteran, having voiced many Marvel and DC characters, including Green Lantern, Ant-Man, and even Harry Osborn in the 2004 Spider-Man 2 video game. A fan favorite, Keaton would go on to reprise his role of Peter Parker in a number of Spider-Man video games, including Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, Spider-Man Edge of Time, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Other appearances include John DiMaggio, aka Jake the Dog and Bender, as Sandman and Hammerhead, as well as Stan Lee. Stan appears in Season 2, Episode 1 as a dock worker who complains about getting his tongue stuck on the side of ships. Spectacular Spider-Man was the first animated Spider-Man series to feature Sandman, aka Flint Marko, in more than one episode. Weissman stated that they were in the middle of planning Season 3 when they received the unfortunate news of the show's cancellation. The original plan was to do a total of 5 seasons, which would cover Peter's junior and senior years of high school. Plans for Season 3 included a storyline involving the Hobgoblin, someone who Weissman had big plans for following the events of Season 2. Other Season 3 plans included classic Spider-Man villains Scorpion, Carnage, and even Hydro-Man. The biggest plan, though, according to Weissman, was to continue the various subplots that had been going on throughout the show's first 2 seasons. In 2008, Weissman said that even in Season 2, he had already planned what villains were going to be in Seasons 3, 4, and 5. Now that's planning ahead. After the initial seasons, the creators also planned on releasing direct-to-DVD movies about Peter's time during summer vacation, spring breaks, and eventually tackling Peter's college career. Each season consisted of 13 episodes. The episodes were originally structured into 3 or 4-part story arcs so that they could be edited together into a feature-length DVD release. However, only the first DVD was released in this format. Subsequent releases were just collections of the episodes. Spectacular Spider-Man had a new theme song recorded by the band Tenderbox. It's very catchy, as evidenced by Ox gleefully humming the tune while in an elevator with Fancy Dan and Montana. Spectacular Spider-Man accrued a huge fan following thanks to its excellent voice cast, new rendition of classic tales, and its high regard for the source material. The series ended with many awards and accolades from various outlets, such as IGN, Variety Magazine, and TV Guide. The final episode of Season 2, entitled Final Curtain, received an Annie Award for storyboarding. But as great as the show did, it was time for Spidey to swing towards newer and greater things. Up next is Spider-Man's most recent show, Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man premiered on Disney XD in April 2012. It premiered alongside the second season of Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Ultimate Spider-Man was the first time Marvel produced their own Spider-Man show. They decided to take the show in a new direction by telling different stories featuring a slew of new characters. The show gets its name from the comic written by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by Mark Bagley, but shares very few similarities with the comic. The show features a high school Peter Parker working for Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. and teaming up with other young superheroes such as Nova, White Tiger, and Power Man. The show ran for 4 seasons, with the 4th season ending in January 2017. With 104 total episodes, it was not only the longest-running Spider-Man animated series of all time, but was the longest-running show based off of a Marvel comic. The previous animated champion who held the title was the 90s animated X-Men. Ultimate Spider-Man had many seasoned writers, such as Paul Dini, whose previous superhero work includes the highly regarded Batman the Animated Series. The show was also helmed by the animation group Man of Action, which includes Stephen T. Siegel, Joe Kelly, Joe Casey, and Duncan Rouleau. These are the men behind such TV shows as Ben 10 and Marvel's Avengers Assemble. Other writing credits go to Joe Quesada, Marvel's editor-in-chief, who also was the executive producer for the series, alongside comic veteran Jeff Loeb. Loeb is a longtime comic book writer for both Marvel and DC. He took a swing at Spidey with his graphic novel, Spider-Man Blue, which deals with Spider-Man coming to terms with the loss of Gwen Stacy. Quesada called the process of coming up with a new take on Spider-Man daunting. There had been so many excellent animated Spider-Man shows in the past, which made their task a little scary. In the end, though, he believes they made something true to Marvel that fans loved. Brian Michael Bendis, who created the comic Ultimate Spider-Man, wrote 23 of the 104 episodes in the show. That's almost a quarter of all the episodes. Bendis debuted on the animated series entitled Freaky, based on the 2004 two-part comic where Wolverine and Spider-Man switch bodies. Bendis is very proud of the series, stating how he loved writing the series for a younger audience. One of the notable differences between this series and other Spidey shows is how Spider-Man delivered his jokes. Spidey would break the fourth wall, look at the camera, and speak directly to the audience. This is the type of humor fans would normally associate with Deadpool. Both Quesada and Denis wanted to have Spider-Man break the fourth wall. They said it would allow the viewer to really get into Peter Parker's head and help the audience relate to him more. The animation of the show also matched the irreverent humor, with Spider-Man sometimes morphing into a cute kitty version of himself during daydream sequences. There was actually a whole episode where all the characters were turned into chibi versions of themselves. It was very adorable. Ultimate Spider-Man also differentiated itself by equipping Spider-Man with many different gadgets and vehicles. This included a spider cycle, the Web Cannon 3000, and spinning arachnodiscs. Drake Bell voiced Spider-Man this go-around. Bell is best known for his TV shows on Nickelodeon, such as The Amanda Show and Drake and Josh. Prior to voicing Spidey, Bell played a parodied version of the superhero in 2008's Superhero Movie. Bell would later go on to voice Spider-Man in a number of cameo appearances in Marvel TV shows and video games. Some examples include Avengers Assemble, Marvel Heroes, and Disney Infinity. Ultimate Spider-Man had some truly great voice talent, with J.K. Simmons reprising his role as J. Jonah Jameson from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. This is the most recent iteration featuring his classic cigar-chomping, Spider-Man-hating voice. Clark Gregg plays Principal Coulson, who keeps Peter and friends under watch at their high school. Keeping in line with Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity, Gregg played Agent Coulson in 2012's Avengers and is currently playing the agent on ABC's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ultimate Spider-Man actually had Stan Lee play a full-fledged recurring character on the show. He played Stan the janitor, who helped out Spidey from time to time. Quesada was very excited to be able to include the full Avengers roster in Ultimate Spider-Man. Thor, Cap, Iron Man, Hulk, and more regularly made appearances on the show, usually to team up with Spidey and take down some villains. The show included some very wacky references to comic books, including Peter Parker turning into his pot-belly counterpart, Peter Porker, aka Spider-Ham. During one of the episodes, Loki takes revenge on Spider-Man by turning him into a pig. Spider-Ham later made an appearance during Season 3. Ultimate Spider-Man also introduced some brand new spider-powered heroes into the Marvel Animated Universe. In Season 3, which was subtitled Web Warriors, Spidey ends up teaming up with a bunch of Spider-Men from different dimensions. Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Girl, Spider-Knight, and even Spider-Ham all make appearances in Season 3. This season pulled some of the strangest Spider-Friends out of the comics and into Marvel animation, and for that, this show is truly unique. Miles Morales was voiced by Donald Glover. Glover is famous for his role on the TV comedy Community, and for his rapping career as Childish Gambino. He is set to appear in Spider-Man Homecoming as a faculty member in Peter's high school. Christopher Daniel Barnes lent his voice to Spider-Knight for the Web Warriors season. Barnes is a Spidey voice vet, having voiced Spider-Man himself in the beloved 90s series on Fox. The Web Warrior season of Ultimate Spider-Man actually ran concurrently to a very similar arc in the Amazing Spider-Man comics called Spider-Verse, written by current ASM comic writer Dan Slott. In both story arcs, Spider-Man teams up with different Spider-Men and women from different dimensions to take down an interdimensional baddie. This was also the premise of the 2010 video game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Slott wrote for that video game as well. It was his job to come up with the specific connections between the separate narratives. Though critics agreed it had a somewhat rocky start, Ultimate Spider-Man soon came into its own. Critics lauded the series for introducing viewers to a ton of new characters, while providing younger audiences with excellent role models to look up to. To date, the series has accumulated more than 51 million views and ranks among the top 5 animated series in key targeted boy demographics. After looking at animated Spider-Man past and present, let's take a leap into our not-too-distant Spider future. Next up is the brand new series simply called Marvel's Spider-Man, premiering on Disney XD in August this year. Much of the creative team behind Ultimate Spider-Man will work on this show as well. Executive producers include Joe Quesada and Jeff Loeb, as well as Alan Fine and Joe Buckley. Fine and Buckley are responsible for producing a handful of Marvel shows, including Avengers Assemble and Hulk and the Agents of Smash. Kevin Shinnick will be story editor. Shinnick has worked on both Mad TV and Robot Chicken, for which he won an Emmy, so it will be interesting to see his take on Spidey's brand of humor. Court Lane, Senior VP of Marvel Animation, said that the simple title of the show reflects a back-to-basic approach. Peter will no longer be working with Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and will instead be dealing with ordinary teenager problems. The series will focus on a 15-year-old Peter Parker, returning to his earliest days as the Webhead. The show will be a fresh take on the story that is already a beloved classic, while offering both heart and humor that fans have come to expect from Spidey. This back-to-basics approach is seen in the costume design as well. Preview clips show Peter in a homemade costume and wearing normal goggles. This is a departure from Ultimate Spider-Man, which had Spidey using a number of gadgets and vehicles while working with S.H.I.E.L.D. Not much has been announced regarding the cast, but we do know that newcomer Max Modell will be a mainstay in the series. Modell was recently introduced in Dan Slott's current run of Amazing Spider-Man. He is Peter's boss at Horizon Laboratory, where Peter works and develops technology to help better mankind, and to also make some new suits and tech for Spidey on the side. Stephen Wacker, VP of Current Series and Development at Marvel, also announced that the series will have Dan Slott on board as series consultant. They will be using much of Slott's 9-year run of the comic in the new series, so start catching up if you haven't already. Modell will act as a sort of mentor to Parker in the series, and will be voiced by Fred Tatasciore. Tatasciore currently voices the Hulk on Marvel's Avengers Assemble and a few DC characters as well, such as Bane in the Injustice video game and Solomon Grundy in the Justice League action TV show. From the teaser clip, we can see that Spidey will be facing off with classic villains like Scorpion. They face off in the subways of NYC, a more down-to-earth location than Ultimate Spider-Man, which had Peter traveling to numerous locales such as Latveria and Asgard. The homemade suit Peter wears is very similar to the one in Spider-Man Homecoming. This makes sense since the series will be debuting soon after Homecoming hits theaters. Promotional and merchandising art for the series has shown Peter teaming up with Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy, similar to the Web Warriors season of Ultimate Spider-Man. Venom is seen on the promotional art, confirming him for the TV series as well. Once again, I'm Joe, and thanks for watching 107 more facts about Spider-Man. Which is your favorite series? Are you ready for the new one? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. We have videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe to channel Frederator, your cartoon central on the internet.